I was fussing over a white peony in the silent ballroom when my phone started vibrating like a bomb. I unlocked the screen to see Derek livestreaming from a private jet, laughing as he told the world our wedding was off just 3 days before the ceremony. He thought he was discarding a broken woman. He forgot he was declaring war on the most ruthless crisis manager in Manhattan. My name is Audrey, and 3 days before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, I was standing in the center of the grand ballroom at the plaza, arguing with a florist about the shade of the hydrangeas. They were supposed to be pure white, but under the amber light of the chandeliers, they looked sickly and yellow. I was reaching for my phone to pull up the contract when the device exploded in my hand. It was not a ringtone. It was a continuous, violent vibration that made my fingers numb within seconds. Notifications were cascading down the screen so fast I could not read them. A blur of text messages, tagged photos, and direct messages. My stomach dropped. In my line of work, this kind of digital avalanche meant only one thing: a catastrophe. I tapped the Instagram icon, which was pulsing with a red notification dot. At the very top of my feed was a live stream. It was Derek. He was standing on a windy tarmac, the sun glaring off the fuselage of a sleek private jet behind him. He looked like the picture of success I had carefully crafted for him over the last 5 years: the tailored blazer, the perfect hair, the easy smile. But he was not smiling at me. He was smiling at the camera, and his arm was wrapped tight around a woman I had never seen before. She was wearing oversized sunglasses that covered half her face and a silk scarf that fluttered in the wind. "Hey guys," Derek shouted over the whine of a turbine engine. "So, look, I know this is sudden. I know people are going to talk. But the wedding on Saturday, it is off." I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving me cold and dizzy. The ballroom was silent, but in my ears, there was a high-pitched ringing. I had to be real with myself. Derek continued, shifting the camera angle to capture his good side. "Audrey, she is a great girl, really, but she is just too controlling. She stifles my energy. My vision for the future needs oxygen, you know, and I just was not getting that with her. I need someone who matches my altitude." He pulled the woman closer. She giggled, a sound that felt like glass breaking in my brain. "This is Sienna," Derek announced, his voice swelling with pride. "She is my muse, a true free spirit. And let us just say, she understands the kind of lifestyle I am meant for. We are heading to her family's estate in Aspen. Private wings, the works." He looked directly into the lens, and for a second, I felt like he was staring right through the screen and spitting in my face. "Audrey, if you are watching this, keep the venue deposit. Consider it a severance package for your wasted years. Use it to buy a cat or something. Bye, sweetie," Sienna chirped, waving a manicured hand at the camera. They laughed together, a cruel, harmonious sound that echoed in the empty ballroom before the screen went black. I lowered the phone. My hand was shaking, not from sadness, but from a shock so profound it felt physical. I looked up. The florist was pretending to arrange a centerpiece, but her eyes were darting toward me. The banquet manager was whispering to a waiter, both of them looking at me with that unbearable mix of pity and morbid curiosity. They were waiting for the breakdown. They were waiting for the bride to collapse onto the marble floor and scream. My phone buzzed again. A single text message. It was from Linda, Derek's mother. "I expect the heirloom ring returned to my safe by 5 o'clock today. Do not make me send the police." I stared at the message. No apology, no concern, just a demand for an asset. I did not cry. I waited for the tears, but they did not come. Instead, a sensation of absolute zero took over my chest. The trembling in my hand stopped. My breathing evened out. The terrified bride was receding, and in her place, something dormant was waking up. I felt the familiar cold clarity of a crisis manager assessing a damage report. I walked out of the plaza without saying a word to the staff. I got into my car and drove through the mid-afternoon traffic, my mind processing the data points: public humiliation, financial severance, reputational damage. When I reached our apartment in Chelsea, the door was unlocked. The silence inside was heavy. I walked to the bedroom. Derek's side of the closet was stripped bare. The expensive watches I had bought him, the designer suits, the limited edition sneakers, all gone. I walked into the kitchen. The espresso machine was gone. The wine fridge was empty. On the counter, where we used to leave love notes, sat a pile of unopened envelopes. I flipped through them. Final notice. Past due, urgent. He had left me with the debt while he ran off to play billionaire. I walked into the bathroom and turned on the harsh vanity lights. I looked at the woman in the mirror. She looked pale, ghost-like. I grabbed a cotton pad and wiped the lipstick from my mouth with a single, sharp motion, smearing the red like a wound. "He wants a show," I whispered to my reflection, my voice low and steady. "Fine. I will give him a finale he will never forget." Derek made a fatal calculation error. He assumed the woman he left was the woman he knew for the last 3 years, the soft, supportive fiancé who baked cookies and proofread his emails. He forgot the woman I was for the 5 years before that. In the high-stakes world of Manhattan crisis management, they did not call me the blushing bride. At Stratus PR, they called me the Iron Hand. I sat down at my desk, the leather cold against my skin, and opened my laptop. It was time to perform an autopsy on this relationship. I closed my eyes for a second, letting the memory wash over me. I remembered meeting Derek at a networking mixer 5 years ago. He was not a CEO then. He was a nervous wreck with a brilliant code but zero social skills, sweating through a cheap polyester shirt. I just don't know how to make them listen," he had stammered that night, his hands shaking as he held a plastic cup of warm wine. I had taken the cup from his hand and set it down. "Stop apologizing. I had told him. And buy a better shirt? I built him. I wrote his pitch decks. I coached him on how to deepen his voice to command a room. I crafted the myth of the tech visionary while I stayed in the shadows. When I stepped down from Stratus to manage his life and our future family, I thought we were partners. I thought I was investing in us. You are too comfortable now. Audrey," he told me just last month, looking at me with disdain over his morning coffee. "You have lost your edge. You don't have that killer instinct anymore." He mistook love for weakness. He mistook contentment for stagnation. I opened the banking portal. My fingers flew across the keyboard, typing in passwords that my muscle memory had not forgotten. I navigated to the joint savings account, the one we had jokingly named the Hamptons Castle. It was supposed to hold my life savings, the proceeds from my Stratos stock options, and every bonus I had earned in a decade. It should have held over $500,000. The page loaded. Available balance $98.42. I stared at the number. $98. I did not scream. I did not throw the laptop. A cold, metallic calm settled over me. This was no longer a breakup. This was a crime scene. "Okay, Derek," I whispered to the empty room. "Let us see where you buried the body." I clicked on the transaction history, setting the filter for the last 6 months. It was a hemorrhage. The money had not been withdrawn in a lump sum. It had been siphoned off, bleed by bleed. Transfer $12,000. Recipient Lux Consulting LLC. Transfer $15,000. Recipient Lux Consulting LLC. Transfer $8,500. Recipient Lux Consulting LLC. Every single week. The memo lines were all identical. Image consulting fees. I sat back in my chair. Image consulting. He was paying someone to style him, no. You do not pay nearly $500,000 in 6 months for haircuts and suits, even in New York. I looked at the dates. Every large transfer coincided with the weekends he told me he was going on retreats to clear his head. "You did not just leave me at the altar," I said aloud, my voice trembling with a sudden, sharp rage that I quickly suppressed. You made me pay for my own replacement. He had funded his courtship of Sienna with my money. He had built his new life on the ashes of my bank account. The realization hit me like a physical blow, but it did not knock me down. It steadied me. He thought he had stripped me of everything, but he had given me exactly what I needed. He had given me a paper trail, and for the iron hand, a paper trail was a weapon. I pulled up the state business registry database, my fingers moving with the precise, rhythmic clacking that used to terrify the interns at Stratus PR. I typed in Lux Consulting LLC. The search wheel spun for a second before vomiting up the truth in black and white. Registered agent Sienna Miller. Got you, I whispered, the sound harsh in the quiet apartment. I did not stop there. I pulled his credit report. Hidden at the bottom of the list was a supplementary card issued 3 months ago, linked to my credit score, but mailed to a P.O. box I did not know existed. I opened the statement history. The dates aligned perfectly with Derek's so-called business trips. When he said he was in Miami meeting angel investors, the statement showed a 3-night stay at the Four Seasons Surfside. The charges were nauseating. Room service for 2, a spa package, and a charge of $4,000 for a supercar experience rental. I looked at the date of the rental. It was the same day he had posted a photo on his private story, a picture of a steering wheel with the caption "New toy for the new empire." He had told Sienna he bought it. He had rented a McLaren for 24 hours using my credit limit to convince his mistress he was a tycoon. There was more. A deposit of $50,000 to a luxury real estate firm in Tribeca. He had put a down payment on a penthouse lease, likely telling her he was buying it outright. You rented a life, Derek, I said, shaking my head as I stared at the screen. And you made me pay the bill. I switched tabs to Instagram. It was time to see exactly who he was trying to impress. Sienna's profile was a curated collage of wealth, private jets, which I now suspected were chartered or just parked on the tarmac for photo ops, designer bags that looked pristine, likely because they were rented or high-quality fakes. She was an influencer, that vague job title that usually meant unemployed with a rich benefactor. I scrolled back 2 weeks. There was a photo of her lounging on the deck of a massive yacht, holding a glass of rosé. The caption read, "My Sanctuary," but my eyes went past her bikini and focused on a towel draped over the railing in the background. It was embroidered with a distinct, minimalist logo, a blue triangle inside a circle. I knew that logo. Everyone in the business world knew that logo. Vanguard Corp. I opened a new search window. Vanguard Corp was the monolith owned by Julian Vance, the most reclusive billionaire in tech. He was famous for 2 things, his ruthless acquisition strategies and his utter hatred of the press. Why was Derek's girlfriend on Julian Vance's yacht? I went to the public records database for San Francisco, where Vanguard was headquartered. I typed in Julian Vance, property records, lawsuits, patents, and then I clicked on vital records. My breath hitched. Marriage license, Julian Vance and Sienna Miller, dated 4 years ago. I sat back, the air leaving my lungs in a rush. Oh my God. I breathed, a dark, twisted laugh bubbling up in my throat. She isn't an heiress. The picture snapped into focus with terrifying clarity. Sienna was not a wealthy socialite. She was a bored, likely neglected trophy wife looking for an exit strategy. She was cheating on Julian Vance. It was a farce, a double-blind con. Derek thought he had snagged a billionaire heiress who would fund his failing company. Sienna thought she had hooked a young, up-and-coming tech mogul who could give her the attention her husband didn't. They were 2 parasites trying to feed off each other, unaware that neither had any blood to give. Derek was broke without me. Sienna was broke without Julian. I looked at the marriage certificate on my screen. This was not just leverage. This was a nuclear launch code. Derek had not just humiliated me. He had humiliated one of the most powerful men in America. You think you are playing in the big leagues? Derek, I said, grabbing my phone to find Julian Vance's contact information. You? You have no idea who you just stole from. I was not the only victim here, and the enemy of my enemy was about to become my best friend. It took exactly 3 phone calls to locate the most elusive man in Silicon Valley. I used the last of my favor chips with a former assistant who now managed gallery openings in Chelsea. She told me Julian Vance was scheduled for a private viewing at the Rothko exhibit at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He preferred empty rooms. He was about to get company. I walked into the gallery 20 minutes later. The room was stark white, silent, and temperature-controlled to a chilly 68 degrees. Julian was standing alone in front of a massive canvas of black and gray, his hands clasped behind his back. He did not turn when he heard my heels clicking on the polished concrete. "If you are a reporter," he said, his voice deep and bored, "you have exactly 5 seconds to leave before my security detail escorts you out, and they are not gentle." I stopped 10 feet away from him. "I am not a reporter. Mr. Vance. And unless you want to lose half your net worth in a messy divorce, I suggest you tell your security to stay outside." He turned then. He was taller than he looked in magazines, with eyes that were cold, sharp, and utterly devoid of patience. He reached into his jacket, presumably to hit a panic button. I pulled a sleek, black envelope from my purse and held it out. "Your wife isn't at the Golden Door Spa in Ojai, Julian. She is at the Four Seasons in Miami, and she is charging the presidential suite to your supplementary Amex." He froze. His hand hovered over his lapel for a second before he slowly extended it to take the envelope. He opened it with precise, steady fingers. I watched him scan the documents I had compiled, the credit card statements, the hotel logs, and a printed screenshot of Sienna's location tag, which she had stupidly left on for her close friend's story. His expression did not explode into rage. It did something much more terrifying. It went completely blank. The annoyance vanished, replaced by the stillness of a shark sensing blood in the water. "I see," he said softly, staring at a photo of Sienna kissing Derek by the pool. "She told me she needed time to find herself. She found someone else," I said, stepping closer. "She thinks she found a young billionaire to replace you. That man is Derek, my ex-fiancé. He canceled our wedding 3 days ago to be with her." Julian looked up at me, a dark amusement dancing in his eyes. "Let me guess. He is not a billionaire. He is broke," I replied bluntly. "He is funding his lifestyle with my savings. He thinks Sienna is an heiress who will save his company. She thinks he is a tech mogul who will fund her divorce. They are conning each other, Mr. Vance." Julian let out a short, dry laugh. He walked over to a bench and sat down, gesturing for me to join him. "She served me with papers last week," he admitted, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "She demanded a renegotiation of our prenup. She threatened to make false allegations of cruelty if I didn't give her $50 million and a seat on the board. She said she had options. Derek is her option." I explained. "He is her plan B. If she can't bleed you dry, she plans to jump ship to him, and if Derek can't get investors, he thinks she will bail him out. It is a house of cards." Julian tapped the envelope against his knee. "I own the building where his launch party is happening next week. The Lumina Hall." Did you know that I blinked? "No, I didn't. I bought the holding company last month to diversify my real estate portfolio," he said, a cruel smile forming on his lips. "I could cancel his reservation right now. I could freeze her accounts. I could end this today." "No," I said quickly. "That is too easy. If you cut them off now, they will just spin it. They will play the victims. You need to let them walk into the trap. Let them think they have won. Let Derek stand on that stage and believe he is the king of the world." Julian looked at me with newfound respect. "You want to humiliate them publicly? I want to destroy them thoroughly," I corrected. He stood up and extended his hand. "My wife hates cheap beer. There is a dive bar around the corner that serves the worst lager in the city. Join me." We sat in a booth with sticky floors and dim lighting, clinking 2 bottles of warm beer together. "To the happy couple," Julian said, his eyes gleaming with malice. "To the alliance of destruction," I replied. For the first time since the live stream, I genuinely smiled. Derek wanted a future with the elite I had just partnered with the man who owned the game. 2 days later, my phone rang. The caller ID displayed Derek, and for a moment, I let it ring, composing my face in the mirror. I practiced the slump of the shoulders, the trembling lip, the look of a woman completely undone. Then, I answered. "Hello," I whispered, letting my voice crack just enough. "Audrey." Derek's voice came through, smooth and dripping with that fake corporate empathy I used to write for him. "Look, I know things are messy, but my legal team thinks we need to formalize our separation. For everyone's peace of mind, I don't want lawyers." I sniffed, wiping a dry eye. "I just want closure." "Exactly. Closure. Meet me at the grind in an hour. And Audrey, bring a pen." I arrived 10 minutes late, wearing sweatpants and a stained, oversized hoodie, my hair pulled back in a messy, unwashed bun. I looked like a wreck. I looked harmless. Derek was sitting in a booth with Sienna. She was wearing sunglasses indoors and scrolling through her phone, clearly bored. When I slid into the seat opposite them, Derek winced visibly. "Wow," he said, shaking his head. "You really let yourself go." It has only been a few days. I haven't been sleeping," I mumbled, keeping my eyes on the table. "Well, this will help you sleep," Derek said, sliding a thick document and a check across the table. $5,000. Consider it a gift. All you have to do is sign this non-disclosure agreement. It says you won't discuss our relationship, the breakup, or my company with anyone. Ever. I looked at the check. $5,000. He had stolen nearly $500,000 from me, and he was offering me crumbs. And if I sign, "You will leave me alone?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Totally," Sienna chimed in, popping her gum. "We just don't want your negative energy affecting Derek's launch. We are building an empire here." I pretended to read the document. It was a template downloaded from the internet, likely because Derek couldn't afford a real lawyer anymore. I pulled a pen from my pocket. I had already reviewed the digital draft he sent over and realized his incompetence left a loophole the size of Texas. I had brought my own copy, swapped in my bag, which looked identical but contained a single modified clause defining confidential information to exclude any facts already in the public domain or verifiable by public record. Since their fraud was about to become very public, this paper was worthless. "Okay," I said, signing the document with a shaky hand. "I just want it to be over." Derek snatched the paper away, grinning. "Smart girl. Finally, knowing your place." As I walked out, I texted Julian the mouse has taken the cheese. Julian's reply was instant, snap the trap. From his office across town, Julian initiated a risk assessment protocol on the loans Derek had applied for. Within an hour, Derek's credit lines were frozen. I knew the panic was setting in because I had cloned Derek's phone notifications to my laptop before I left him. I watched the alerts roll in. Transaction declined vendor. Lumina Lighting. Transaction declined vendor. Elite Catering. Derek was frantically texting Sienna Babe. "Bank glitch. Can you transfer that $50,000 you promised for the catering? Need it by 5 o'clock. Sienna, who I knew was currently dodging calls from a loan shark regarding a poker debt, replied, "My trust fund release is delayed. Daddy is being so annoying. Just put it on your card." They were drowning, and they were trying to use each other as a life raft. I decided to throw them an anchor. I arranged for a courier to deliver a package to Sienna's hotel room. Inside was a handbag, a Hermes Birkin. It looked perfect to the untrained eye, but it was a super fake, a high-grade replica I bought for $300. I included a card, typed on plain white paper. "True love doesn't need the real thing." Sienna would be terrified. She would wonder if Derek knew she was a fraud. She would wonder if Julian had found her. The paranoia would eat her alive. The next morning, an invitation arrived in my email. It was for the new era launch party of Derek's company. I called him. "Why did you send this?" I asked, playing the confused victim. "I want you to come." "Audrey," Derek said, his voice booming with manic confidence. He obviously wanted to show off, to prove that he had won, to drag me out in front of the cameras one last time as the defeated ex. Show the world we are mature. Prove you are not bitter. I smiled at the phone, my eyes cold and sharp. "Okay, Derek," I said, my voice dropping the tremble and shifting into something smooth and dangerous. "I will come, and I will bring a surprise. You won't want to miss it." "Great," he said, oblivious to the shift in my tone. "Dress nice. Try not to embarrass me." I hung up and looked at the dress bag hanging on my door. Inside was not a dress. It was a white power suit, tailored to kill. "Oh, I won't embarrass you, Derek," I whispered. "I am going to destroy you." The days leading up to the launch were a masterclass in delusion. Derek was burning money he did not have, desperate to project the image of a unicorn startup before he had even launched a viable product. He hired influencers who charged $10,000 for a single story post and flew in a DJ from Ibiza on a last-minute commercial flight that cost 3 times the normal rate. He was funding this circus with predatory loans, unaware that the debt he was racking up had been quietly purchased that morning by a shell company called Nemesis Holdings. And Nemesis Holdings belonged to Julian Vance. Derek was effectively building his stage on trapdoors owned by the man he was cuckolding. I stood in front of my full-length mirror, examining my reflection. The weeping ex-fiancé was gone. In her place stood the Iron Hand. I had chosen a white, tailored suit, sharp, structural, and blindingly bright. It was the kind of outfit that did not ask for attention. It commanded submission. I slicked my hair back into a tight, severe bun and applied a shade of lipstick that was darker than blood. "Ready, Ms. Hart." I turned to the man standing by my door. Marcus was Julian's head of legal compliance, a man who could dismantle a corporation with a single memo. Tonight. He was my date. "Let's go bury him." "Marcus," I said. My briefcase was heavy, not with emotional letters, but with cold, hard evidence. I had the bank transfers showing Derek moving my savings into his personal accounts. I had the forged financial reports he sent to potential investors, inflating his revenue by 300%. I had it all. When we arrived at the venue, the scene was nauseatingly opulent. The paparazzi were screaming names, blinded by the flashbulbs. A stretch limousine pulled up, and Sienna stepped out. She looked like a caricature of wealth. She was wearing a diamond necklace that caught the light with a vulgar brilliance. "My grandmother left it to me," I heard her tell a reporter, touching the stones with feigned modesty. "It has been in the family for 80 years. I suppressed a laugh. I had the receipt on my phone. It was a 48-hour rental from a jeweler in the Diamond District, and she had paid the insurance premium with a credit card that was maxed out 10 minutes ago. I stepped onto the red carpet, Marcus at my side. The cameras swung toward us. They expected a broken woman. Instead, they got a warrior. I saw Derek's jaw drop from across the entrance. He looked confused, then terrified. Before I could reach the entrance, Linda, Derek's mother, intercepted me. She was holding a large glass of red wine, her eyes narrowed with malice. She moved with clumsy purpose, pretending to trip as she lunged toward me, the wine sloshing dangerously over the rim. "Oops!" she cried out, aiming the glass at my white suit. I did not flinch. I sidestepped with the smooth precision of a dancer. Linda, unable to stop her momentum, stumbled forward. The wine splashed violently, not on me, but all over the front of her own beige silk gown. "Oh, no," I said, looking down at the spreading crimson stain on her chest. "Linda, you really should be more careful. Red is such a difficult stain to remove," she gasped, sputtering in indignation as the photographers snapped pictures of her ruined dress. I walked past her without looking back. Inside, the bass was thumping against my chest. Derek grabbed my arm and pulled me into the shadows of the backstage wing. He was sweating profusely, his eyes wide and manic. "What are you doing here with him?" he hissed, nodding toward Marcus. "And why are you dressed like that? You are trying to upstage me." "I am here to support you." "Derek," I said, my voice calm and terrifyingly even. "You wanted me to see your big moment." Just do not make a scene," he stammered, running a hand through his hair. "Sienna's investors are here. After tonight, I am going to be the king of Silicon Valley. I am going to be untouchable. Do you hear me? Untouchable." I reached out and adjusted his crooked bow tie, smoothing the fabric against his throat. I leaned in close, smelling the fear and the cheap cologne radiating off him. "Relax, Derek," I whispered into his ear. "Just enjoy it. Take it all in, because this is the highest you will ever be in your entire life." The house lights cut to black, replaced instantly by a thumping electronic beat that vibrated the floorboards beneath my feet. A spotlight hit center stage, piercing the darkness, and there was Derek. He walked out with his arms raised, soaking in the applause like it was sunlight. For a moment, he actually looked the part of the visionary CEO he had always pretended to be. The crowd, a mix of curious investors, rented influencers, and tech journalists, cheered. They had no idea they were cheering for a dead man walking. "Welcome," Derek shouted, his voice amplified to boom across the hall. "Welcome to the future." He began his presentation, pacing the stage with a practiced energy that I knew all too well. I stood in the shadows of the wings, watching him mouth the words I had written for him years ago. "We are not just building an app," Derek announced, gesturing wildly. "We are building a digital ecosystem that breathes. We are creating a paradigm shift in how humanity connects." I crossed my arms, feeling a cold smirk tug at the corner of my mouth. I wrote that line on a napkin in a diner 2 years ago. He was butchering the delivery, using buzzwords he did not understand to sell a product that did not exist. He was selling smoke, and he was using my script to do it, in the front row. Sienna was clapping, but her smile was brittle. She was not looking at Derek with the adoration of a supportive partner. She was glancing down at her clutch, checking her phone every 10 seconds. She was terrified that her husband, the man she was currently defrauding, was going to check in. She had no idea he was standing 20 feet above her in the VIP box, looking down with the dispassionate gaze of an executioner. And that is why our revenue model is projected to triple by. Derek paused for effect, sweeping his hand toward the massive LED screen behind him. By the 4th quarter, the screen flickered. The sleek, animated logo of his company dissolved into static. Then, it resolved into something much more mundane and terrifying, a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. People squinted, trying to make sense of the rows and columns that had replaced the futuristic graphics. Just a minor technical hiccup. "Folks," Derek stammered, his confident smile twitching. "Innovation is messy. Right. Can we get the graphics back up?" But the screen did not go black. Instead, it zoomed in. The text became large enough for everyone in the back row to read. "Debit $4,000. Memo Sienna, Hermes Bag Rental. Source Audrey Hart Savings Trust. Debit $2,500. Memo Sienna, Hotel Suite Miami. Source Audrey Hart Investment Fund. Debit $800. Memo Sienna, Champagne Service. Source Audrey Hart Emergency Fund." The murmurs in the crowd grew into a loud buzz. Phones went up, cameras recording the screen. Derek turned around and saw the list. His face went drained of color, turning a sickly shade of gray. He looked like he had been punched in the gut. "Turn it off," Derek yelled, forgetting his microphone was still on. His voice cracked with panic. "Cut the feed!" He was frantically slicing his hand across his throat, signaling the tech booth. I looked up to the booth. The technician was pounding on his keyboard, shaking his head in frustration. He was locked out. Julian's cybersecurity team had seized the system 5 minutes ago. The spreadsheet scrolled down, revealing purchase after purchase, a humiliating receipt of infidelity paid for by the woman he left. Sienna realized the game was up before Derek did. She shot up from her seat, clutching her fake designer bag, and turned toward the exit. She needed to run before the cameras found her, but she stopped dead in her tracks. A figure emerged from the darkened VIP stairwell, blocking the aisle. It was Julian Vance. He was not wearing a tuxedo. He was wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than Derek's entire company, and his presence sucked the oxygen out of the room. He did not say a word to her. He just looked at her, and she shrank back, stumbling against a chair. Julian walked past her, mounting the stairs to the stage with a slow, predatory grace. He held a microphone in his hand. The murmuring crowd went instantly silent. They recognized him. This was the great white shark of the tech world swimming into a goldfish pond. Derek turned and saw him. His eyes lit up with a desperate, delusional hope. He actually thought Julian was coming to save him. He thought this was part of some surprise endorsement. "Julian," Derek gasped into his lapel mic, extending his hand, his sweat dripping onto the stage floor. I did not know you were... Are you here to announce the partnership?" Julian did not even look at the outstretched hand. He walked right past Derek, leaving him standing there like a fool with his hand in the air. Julian stopped at the center of the stage, turned to the audience, and waited. The silence was absolute. He did not look angry. He looked like a man deciding which wine to pair with a steak. With a slow, deliberate movement that made the silence in the room even louder, he adjusted the microphone stand with a slow, deliberate movement that made the silence in the room even louder. "Good evening," Julian said, his voice calm and terrifyingly polite. "I know many of you think I am here to announce a partnership. You think I am here to validate this company." He paused, letting the hope bloom on Derek's face one last time before crushing it. "I am not here to invest," Julian continued, his voice hardening like concrete setting. "I am here to repossess my assets." Derek blinked, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land. "Assets I don't understand. We don't have a contract yet." Julian ignored him. He raised a hand and pointed a finger directly at the front row. The spotlight followed his gesture, landing squarely on Sienna, who was trying to shrink into her seat. "Allow me to introduce the first asset," Julian announced. "This is Sienna, my wife." A collective gasp swept through the room. It was a physical sound, a wave of shock that hit the stage. "She told me she was going on a spiritual retreat in Bali to find herself," Julian said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "But it seems she found her way here instead." "To spend my money." Again. The live stream cameras pivoted instantly, abandoning the stage to focus on Sienna. Her face was a mask of sheer terror, her skin pale under the heavy makeup. Wife Derek stammered, his voice trembling. No, that is impossible," she said. "She told me she is an heiress. She said her family owns an oil conglomerate in Texas." Julian laughed. It was a short, sharp sound that echoed in the silent hall. "Oil?" Julian scoffed. "Derek, look at her. She was my receptionist 3 years ago. She has never been near an oil field in her life. She is not an heiress. She is unemployed." He leaned forward, looking down at Sienna with cold amusement. "And those diamonds around her neck," Julian added, "they are paste, glass, high-quality fakes, just like her title." "And just like your company, Derek." The illusion shattered. The silence broke. Sienna leaped to her feet, abandoning all pretense of grace. She turned on Derek, her face twisted in a snarl of pure rage. "You said you were a genius," she screamed, pointing a manicured finger at him. "You told me you were the next big thing. You said you had $10 million in liquid cash ready to deploy." Derek's face flushed a deep, ugly red. He screamed back, his voice cracking under the strain of panic. "I thought you were the investor," he yelled, spitting the words out. "I spent everything I had to impress you. I drained Audrey's savings account because you said your trust fund was unlocking on Monday. I have nothing left because of you." The microphone on Derek's lapel was still hot. Every word, every accusation, every screech of their mutual deception was being broadcast to the room and to the millions of people watching online. They were tearing each other apart, confessing to fraud and theft in real time. "You are a fraud," Sienna shrieked. "You are broke, and you are a gold digger who is already married." Derek roared back. It was chaos. It was perfect. I walked out from the wings. I did not hurry. I moved with the slow, inevitable momentum of a glacier. I stepped onto the stage, the bright lights reflecting off my white suit. I walked past Derek, who was shaking with rage and fear, and stood next to Julian. The crowd quieted down, sensing a shift. They looked at me, the woman who had been humiliated 3 days ago, now standing tall while her ex-fiancé crumbled. I looked at Derek. He looked small. "Audrey," he breathed, his eyes darting around the room, looking for an escape that did not exist. I did not need a microphone. My voice was projected by the sheer force of my anger, refined into something cold and sharp. "You canceled our wedding on a live stream because you said I was too controlling," I said, my voice steady. "You said I held you back. You said I didn't fit your future." I took a step closer to him. He flinched. "You were right about one thing, Derek. I was controlling." I told him, "But you forgot why. I wasn't controlling you to keep you down. I was the only person keeping you out of federal prison for the last 5 years." I let the words hang in the air, watching as the realization of what I meant and what was coming next finally hit him. The heavy double doors at the back of the hall swung open with a violent thud. It was not the waitstaff bringing more champagne. 6 officers from the Economic Crimes Unit marched in, their faces grim, flanked by 3 men in sharp gray suits who carried briefcases identical to mine. The electronic music died instantly, leaving only the hum of the ventilation system and the frantic breathing of the man beside me. I walked over to the lead officer and handed him the file I had been guarding all night. My hand was steady. "This is the loan application for the shell company." "Officer," I said, my voice cutting through the silence of the room. "The co-signer is listed as Audrey Hart, but if you check the biometric analysis of the pen pressure on page 4, you will see I never touched that paper. Derek forged my signature to secure a $200,000 line of credit from a predatory lender." Derek was shaking his head, sweat flying off his forehead as he backed away. No, wait, it was just... I was going to pay it back. It was a bridge loan I meant to ask her." Julian stepped forward, standing over Derek like a titan. He adjusted his cuffs, looking at Derek with profound disinterest. "And since you defaulted on the payment schedule as of 5 o'clock this afternoon," Julian said, checking his watch, "I am calling in the debt. Nemesis Holdings now owns your inventory, your intellectual property, and the lease on that McLaren you have been parading around in. It is all mine to liquidate." The lead officer stepped up to Derek and pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt. The metal clicked ominously in the quiet hall. "Derek Evans, you are under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." "You can't do this," Derek screamed, his voice high and shrill as the cold steel locked around his wrists. "I am an innovator. I am a CEO. This is a mistake." Suddenly, a wail rose from the front row. Linda, her beige dress still stained with the red wine she had tried to throw at me, scrambled onto the stage. She stumbled in her heels, grabbing my arm, her nails digging into my white suit. "Audrey, please," she sobbed, her face a mess of running mascara. "He is your fiancé. He loves you. You can't let them take my boy." "Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you signed it." I looked down at her hand on my sleeve. I did not feel pity. I felt nothing but a cold, clinical detachment. I reached out and peeled her fingers off me, one by one. "He is not a boy. Linda," I said, my voice as hard as ice. "He is a criminal, and you are trespassing." I signaled to the security team, and they gently but firmly escorted her away, her cries fading into the background. Sienna saw the ship sinking and tried one last desperate jump. She turned to Julian, widening her eyes and summoning fake tears, her hands trembling as she reached for him. "Julian, baby. You have to believe me," she cried, her voice pitching up into a plea. "He tricked me. He told me he was single. He manipulated me. I am a victim here, just like Audrey. He made me do it." Julian did not even flinch. He pulled a tablet from his jacket and held it up. "This is the credit card statement from the suite in Miami," Julian said. "And these are the time-stamped messages where you told him to, what was it, bleed the old man dry before we run." "I am the old man. Sienna." Sienna froze, her mouth hanging open. "My lawyers will file for divorce at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning," Julian stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "The infidelity clause in our prenuptial agreement is ironclad. You get nothing, no alimony, no settlement. You leave this marriage with exactly what you brought into it, which is zero." The flashbulbs erupted like a thunderstorm as the officers began to drag Derek toward the exit. The image of the visionary tech genius was gone. In his place was a sobbing, broken man in a tuxedo that did not fit, shuffling in handcuffs while the world watched. I glanced at the giant screen behind him. The chat on the live stream was scrolling so fast it was a blur of mockery and shock. The internet had turned Derek and Sienna into the biggest joke of the year within minutes. Derek twisted his head around as they pushed him into the back of the squad car outside the open doors. His eyes met mine. They were filled with a terrifying amount of regret, a desperate plea for the life he had thrown away 3 days ago. "Audrey," he shouted, the sound muffled by the glass as the door slammed shut. "Audrey. I am sorry. I am so sorry." I watched the red and blue lights of the police car fade into the night. I waited for a pang of sadness, a twinge of nostalgia for the 5 years we spent together, but there was only silence in my heart. The debt was paid. The account was closed. 1 month has passed since the night the lights went out on Derek's fraudulent empire. I sat in my new office, a corner suite in Midtown with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the skyline I had conquered. The sign on the frosted glass door did not say, "Future Mrs. Evans." It read, "Heart Crisis Management." The media had dubbed me the Revenge Queen, a title I initially hated but eventually decided to monetize. I was no longer just a PR specialist. I was the person you called when your fairy tale turned into a nightmare and you needed someone to burn the castle down. The fallout had been swift and absolute. Derek took a plea deal to avoid a 20-year sentence. He was currently serving a 5-year term in a minimum security facility upstate. The irony was delicious. The man who wanted to be a tech billionaire was now working in the prison textile shop, sewing laundry bags for 12 cents an hour. And thanks to the court order I secured, every single penny of those wages was garnished and deposited directly into my account to pay off the debt he stole from me. It would take him about 4,000 years to pay me back in full, but the principle of the matter was worth more than the money. Sienna did not fare much better. After Julian stripped her of every asset and the internet turned her into a meme, she was exiled from New York society. Rumor had it she had moved back to her small hometown in Ohio. She was working at a discount nail salon in a strip mall, scrubbing feet and listening to other people's problems. Her Instagram account had been deleted. Her influencer dreams dissolved into the ether of irrelevance. A knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. It was Julian. He walked in carrying 2 coffees, looking relaxed in a navy sweater. He was no longer the terrifying shark from the stage. He was my business partner and, surprisingly, my closest friend. He had provided the seed capital for my new firm, not as charity, but as a calculated investment. The quarterly projections look aggressive, Julian said, placing a cup on my desk. I like it. I learned from the best, I replied with a smile. There was a warmth between us, a deep current of mutual respect born from the battlefield. We were not rushing into anything romantic. We were 2 survivors enjoying the peace we had fought for, letting the silence between us be comfortable rather than filled with empty promises. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was the heirloom engagement ring. Linda, Derek's mother, had sold it to me last week for $500 because she was desperate to pay her own legal fees for aiding and abetting Derek's fraud. Going to pawn it? Julian asked. No, I said, standing up. I have a better idea. That evening, I gathered my true friends, the ones who had stood by me when I was humiliated for a party on a rented boat. We called it the unwedding party. There was no white dress, no bouquet toss, and absolutely no stress. We drank vintage champagne and danced to music that wasn't curated by a focus group. As the boat drifted down the Hudson River, I walked to the railing. I held the ring over the dark, churning water. To the past, I whispered. I let go. The ring hit the water with a tiny, insignificant splash and vanished forever. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I hadn't realized I was still carrying. The next morning, back in my office, the red phone on my desk rang. This was the emergency line reserved for high-profile clients. My assistant buzzed me. Ms. Hart, she said, her voice hushed. It is Alara Vance, the actress. She is hysterical. I picked up the receiver. This is Audrey. Audrey, oh God. Audrey, the famous voice on the other end sobbed, sounding broken and small. I found the texts. He is doing it again. He is leveraging my name to get funding for his studio, and he is sleeping with the lead actress. I don't know what to do. I feel so stupid. I swiveled my chair around to face the city, the sunlight hitting my face. I picked up a gold pen and clicked it open. Stop crying, Alara, I said, my voice firm and reassuring. You are not stupid. You were just trusting. But that ends today. Can you help me? She asked, a desperate hope in her voice. I want to hurt him like he hurt me. I smiled, watching the traffic flow like a river of steel far below me. I was not just a woman who had been left at the altar anymore. I was the architect of justice. Don't worry, I know exactly what to do. I told her, let's turn your pain into a weapon. I hung up the phone and walked out onto the balcony. The wind whipped through my hair, but I didn't shiver. I looked out at the horizon, a woman who had walked through the fire and come out made of steel. I was not waiting for a happy ending. I was writing my own. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and let me know your city or country and tell me what you would have done if you were in Audrey's shoes. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button so this story can reach even more people who need to hear it.